Friends and patriots, welcome and good evening to you. My name is Ajuri Ngelale, and I come to you from the nation's capital. This is Eagle Eye. On this edition of the program, we dig deep into a sector which directly affects us all and invariably impacts almost all others, though while remaining often on the periphery of the national consciousness. And that is water resources development, as we sojourn across Nigeria with the Galadiman Kazari and Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adamu, later on this edition of Eagle Eye. But first, before we go in depth behind the scenes of water resources development in Nigeria, I take you into confidence once again this evening in this week's entry from my briefing memoranda. Many observers who assess the critical developments which have characterized President Muhammadu Buhari's presidential legacy rightly think of his commitment to infrastructural development in airports, seaports, railways, roads, dams, and other important areas. But for some, what comes to mind is the larger move towards self-sufficiency in food production across subsectoral value chains. Having successfully progressed from being the largest importer of rice in Africa in 2015 to now being the largest producer of rice in Africa presently, was not exclusively a function of providing over 948 billion naira in low-interest loans and seedlings to over 4.5 million smallholder farmers nationwide through the Anchor Borrowers Program. Nor was it only a function of President Muhammadu Buhari's large and consistent investment in the revitalization of rice mills and fertilizer blending plants nationwide. For it is one thing to provide finance and seedlings to millions of farmers. It is another thing altogether to simultaneously ensure the sufficient supply of quality fertilizers, which enable optimum yields from these critical inputs, as well as sufficient processing capacity to offtake and process raw yield from farms before reaching the consumer. Through his bold efforts to remake the non-productive, import-heavy, and rent-sharing economy he inherited into a labor-intensive, inclusive, and export-focused economy, President Muhammadu Buhari progressed Nigeria forward from having a mere 10 rice mills in 2015 to now having 40 rice mills in country today, all while expanding our fertilizer blending capacity from a meager 5 fertilizer blending plants in Nigeria in 2015 to 46 fertilizer blending plants in our country presently. These efforts would be further bolstered by President Muhammadu Buhari's approval that the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, oversee the provision of billions of naira worth of fertilizer subsidies digitally provided directly to over 1 million farmers, equitably dispersed across every state of the Federation under the 2.3 trillion naira Economic Sustainability Plan. Rice pyramids do not just simply appear. Nigeria's rapidly increasing stock of local food production across value chains is the result of coordinated policy execution across several contributing sectors. I mention all of this to say that so often when we evaluate the landmark success of President Muhammadu Buhari's agricultural revolution, we tend to narrowly attribute such to agricultural sector administrators or subnational governments, and sometimes even to lending financial institutions. But what we often overlook is the massive role that Water Resources Administration plays in the exponential growth of local food production in Nigeria. To reduce dependency on rain-fed agricultural production, that is, production that is reliant on rain feeding soils during rainy season, President Muhammadu Buhari, through the Federal Ministry of Water Resources, approved the National Irrigation Development Program 2016 to 2030. Irrigation essentially entails the application of water to crops through the gravity-enabled channelization of water resources through communities vulnerable to monoseason or wet season farming. Irrigation facilities effectively enable year-round farming, which exponentially increases crop output, wealth creation, and by extension, moves Nigeria beyond food self-sufficiency into mass export viability. It is with this understanding that we can appreciate the fact that between 2015 and 2019, Nigeria developed a massive 130,000 hectares of irrigation-facilitated land across the country, with over 55,000 hectares of such handed out to commercial farmers within the same period. For comparative perspective, it is key to understand that Nigeria developed a mere 40,000 hectares of irrigation-facilitated land in the preceding 15 years combined. President Muhammadu Buhari's move to empower whole communities with irrigation facilities for year-round farming across breadbasket zones has as much to do with Nigeria's unprecedented success in the sector as the mass provision of seedlings and finance. However, the president recognizes a new threat to Nigeria's food export for wealth drive. Recently, at the Africa-European Union Summit in Belgium, President Muhammadu Buhari took European leaders to task for leveraging on agricultural subsidies to EU farmers at the expense of African agricultural export competitiveness. Protectionist policies, which provide the same impact as external tariffs, though with another name. Pushing for a new deal for Africa with the EU, the president deemed unacceptable the current scenario in which over 50 billion euros is given annually to EU farmers through subsidies to make European food artificially cheap, all while African countries lose huge export market and by extension access to foreign exchange, with investment in African agriculture undermined in the process. Of course, here is where Africa can save Africa. With an average of between 13% and 15% of total African trade occurring between African countries, there is so much room for intra-African trade growth and wealth to be shared as intracontinental infrastructure is upgraded and the African Continental Free Trade Agreement moves deeper into implementation. Share your thoughts and constructive comments with us on the Eagle Eye Facebook and Instagram page. We go deeper after this short break. Do stay with us. Aboard an early presidential Air Force flight en route to Kano, it is rarely ever too early to be briefed on official matters for the Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adamu. He alights the aircraft with official assignments on one hand and royal duties on the other. On this day, he is preparing to wear two caps. One as a Minister of the Federal Republic, and the other as the Galadiman Kazauri of the Kazauri Emirate in Jigawa State. Fully adorned in the attire of the Galadiman of the Emirate, he receives homage from local residents ahead of a matrimonial nikah ceremony over which he is to preside in the Emir's palatial complex.
Muna neman izini inda hari
sallallahu alaihi wasallama
The wedding concludes smoothly. Not unaware of the busy day ahead inspecting critical water projects in the zone, he spends time before departure paying courtesy in the court of his elder brother, His Royal Highness Dr. Najib Husseini Adamu, the Emir of Kazauri. With the convoy en route to Gari irrigation project, the minister holds back no effort to provide insight into the infrastructure we see around us. Honorable Minister, we're standing here at a project that's been much talked about in the nation's water development sector, being the Gari irrigation project. Can you just inform our viewers a bit about what this project means, not just to the local community, but to the larger picture of what you're doing in the water sector?
Well, first of all, this is one of the projects that was inherited, and as you know, the government has taken a policy that will continue projects that we believe are viable and meaningful to the people. And especially because the focus of this administration also is to enhance food security, to bring back agriculture to the fore, to diversify the economy. This is a huge agricultural project. If we must produce what we eat and eat what we produce, we must be able to farm all year round. That means we have the rainy season farming and the dry season farming. This is 2,300 hectares when this job is finished that will put in rice, maize, onions, other vegetables, so many things, into the market to enhance our food security. So it's a very, very viable project when you look at it from an economic perspective and the fact that we are trying to enhance our food security.
We're seeing farmers really taking advantage of the opportunities presented by this project as we're here. What are some of the accounts that you've heard from some of the local farmers and cultivators as to what this has meant to them in their livelihoods?
Well, many are saying that they don't need to go anywhere because the tradition here is that after the rainy season, all the young people go into the towns. They do the okadas, the night watchmen, and simple traders and water vendors in the cities. The one time we came, they said, with this, we don't need to go anywhere because we have enough land and enough water to continue to cultivate the land all year round. They are very, very happy about it. And in fact, the premium for land has increased here considerably since this project got to this kind of the kind of traction that it has now. So by and large, we're stopping rural-urban drift. It's not happening here. I know also that years ago some young people used to go to places like Jos, and we used to lose a lot of people for all those communal clashes. And I think that also, this project will also help to stop that because the people feel more secure in their own environment and they can do what they want to do.
A local resident offers his own assessment.
Allah ya aiko mana da shi ta bangaren shugaban kasa Muhammadu Buhari, gaskiya ya taimaki al'umma dan talaucin da ake fama da shi a area nan gaba ɗaya yanzu ya kau, inda kowa in garin Allah ta'ala ya waye ya samu abin da zai yi, iya kuma samun taimakon da zai rike kansa ya rike iyalansa har ma ya taimake ni. Aikin ya area nan yanzu gaskiya babu shi, kowa yana samun abin da zai shi, wanda ya je gida ya kwanta tun da safe duk mutum ya fito gurin da sai ya kai har faɗo rana aiki yake yi, walau leburanci ko kuma gonarsa, kuma zai tashi ya samu abin da zai rufa kansa asiri. Saboda haka tsakaninmu da shugaban kasa sai godiya, mun gode don saka aikin nan da kamfanin ma da ya aikin, kowa an gode masa. Jama'a ta samu ci gaba, an kawo da wannan talauci a wannan area sai dai gaskiya a wani bangaren, amma mu nan da mun ji daɗi, mun gode wa Allah ta'ala.
Surrounded by contractors and local farmers, the minister briefs Nigerians on the scope of the long-awaited Gari irrigation project and how it works.
Gross area of 2,300 hectares, net area of 2,114 hectares, divided into 8 sectors. Well, this was deliberate because it's from design perspective it's good because you need to put them in different components, but it also helps us during construction to be able to concentrate on sector by sector so that we can finish and hand over to farmers. And even while the project is ongoing, you know, as you move downstream, the upstream portion that you finish, you are able to hand them over to farmers. So it straddles both Kano and Jigawa states. The dam, there are 2 dams that are feeding the irrigation system, the Gari Dam and Marke Dam. They are all almost together. And the entire water flow is by gravity, so we're not pumping anything. So you can see sectors 1 all the way down to 8. It's like a narrow gorge, but quite a substantial amount of land. We could do more, but irrigation is also a factor of the available water. Sure. Part of the water is used from the dam. I mean, the water in the dam, some of it goes to Dambata for water supply and Kazori, and then the rest of it goes for irrigation. And based on the water demand analysis and available water, the maximum we can provide is 2,114 hectares at the moment.
With construction workers all over the site, the minister informs us that progress on irrigation infrastructure was not always something to be taken for granted. Honorable Minister, we've seen completed sections of this massive irrigation project. We're now here located at an ongoing construction point. What can you tell us about the background of this project and why it is you felt it necessary to revive it?
Well, this project was designed by the old Kano state government way back in the 80s, but they couldn't get to start it. And then during the PTF days, the community requested PTF to implement the project. And the contract was awarded at that time in 1998 for the entire 2,300 hectares. Unfortunately, after the main canal had gone just 50%, which is here, you can see this part of the main canal, the PTF was scrapped and the project was transferred to the Federal Ministry of Water Resources. Unfortunately, it was kept there for 17 years. But there's
abandoned
for 17 years. Nothing was done. When we came back to start this project, the whole existing canal that was constructed in the 1998, 1999 was covered by weeds.
Wow. And
so they had to clear the whole place to get this work done. So all this work you are seeing was work that started from basically 2018 to date. At that time it was only the main canal, but all the secondary and other distribution canals were not there. Not a single drop of water was available to farmers for irrigation.
Wow.
But as I said, now we have almost 800 hectares out of the 2,100 hectares have been made available to farmers. And the entire scope of work, based on the entire scope of work, not talking about the hectarage, but in terms of the entire scope, about 60% of the work has been completed now. So this is where we are, and the rate we are going, we envisage that this project will be finished before 2023 dry season.
By 2015, the Federal Ministry of Water Resources held more than ₦250 trillion worth of abandoned projects, with liabilities nearing ₦100 billion. Even as a predominant majority of the abandoned projects failed to surpass 20% completion. 116 large-scale projects in total were abandoned, including 37 incomplete large dams and reservoirs, 41 incomplete large water supply projects, and 38 major irrigation and drainage projects left incomplete. This does not include hundreds of other abandoned small-scale projects. On assumption of office in 2015, President Muhammadu Buhari set a target of 100,000 hectares of irrigation-facilitated land by 2020. That year, 130,000 hectares had been successfully completed. The Buhari administration has now set a new federal government target of 500,000 hectares of irrigation-facilitated land by 2030. Along with a combined state and private sector goal of 1.5 million hectares of irrigation-facilitated land by 2030, making 2 million hectares by 2030 in total. Like hundreds of other abandoned water projects that have been completed under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, the completion of the decades-long neglected Kazaure Water Works has restored potable water supply to the entire emirate.
So this is the aerator. That's the aerator. That's the probably after the intake. It's probably the first component of water treatment. And what it does is to allow some time for the raw water to have contact with oxygen. And if there is any smell from the raw water, the contact with the oxygen enables that smell to be removed or reduced considerably before it goes continues into the process. And from there, the water comes here into the sedimentation tank. Some people call it detention tank. Some people call it clarifier, depending on the quality of the water. So it's a sedimentation tank where all the suspended solids are removed. There's some chemical injection of aluminum sulfates or superfluor or a combination of that would get all the suspended solids to be coagulated and then, form into lumps. Some will float on the water, some will go down to the bottom, and then as it's cleared, it goes into the filter bed down there, which is a bed with layers of sand in various gradations. So it kind of percolates down, and the water is filtered, and then the filtered water will go into, once it's filtered, it goes into the clear tank, clear water tank. In between, there's a combination of chemicals that are injected. There's, pH adjustment, you put lime and so on, up after the aluminum sulfate. And then, while in the sedimentation, the clear water tank, then you also have some chlorine injected for disinfection. Fantastic. And that's probably the last bit of treatment process. And then there is a pump that now lifts the water and pumps it into the city.
Given the history in a fairly remarkable feat from 2016 to 2020, every single rural water supply scheme that began implementation in those years were equally completed in those same years across all states of the Federation. All 472 rural water projects launched within the period were all completed within the period. The same can be said for urban water supply projects, as all 82 projects launched nationwide by the Buhari administration were equally completed within the same period. Back to work in Abuja, the minister tells us that this must be a national standard, below which we never dip again.
As a professional, I think it just makes sense that you start a project and finish. My background is project management, so I've been trained to deliver projects, to start a project and finish it. That's just a natural instinct, if I may say. And in any case, it's only responsible because government cannot continue to be spending money and then you just you leave. The money belongs to the people. The projects belong to the people. They are supposed to be for the benefit of the people. And at the end of the day, they don't benefit anything from that project. It just doesn't make sense. Who benefits? The contractor. He makes his profit, and all the manufacturers of the tanks and the pumps, and they move on. That's not my idea or anybody's idea of development. The idea of development is that these projects must be conceived, implemented, completed and become sustainable for the benefit of the people. So that's it. We came into this administration, there were 116 major projects that were either abandoned or were comatose, and only a few of them were still being implemented. And therefore we, again, because of this instinct and the sense of professionalism, we decided that we're not even going to embark on any new project, at least during the first term of the administration. And that has remained the situation up till now, except I said major projects. That doesn't mean that we're not going to do the other project. And that's been the case up till now. We've just concentrated on trying to finish those we can. We audited all the projects, decided on which ones are beneficial. We canceled some of them that we thought was a bad investment, or those that we thought the states could handle better. We discussed, we negotiated with the states and handed over to them. The rest we decided to prioritize high, medium, and low priority. And on the basis of that, we've been able to complete about 34, going to about 40. Maybe by the end of this administration, we would have done about 45, 50. So maybe a little over 50% of that. But that's the best we can do, considering the resources in the country that are available to us. And but we feel good about it. At the end of the day, we don't want to saddle any incoming administration with an unfinished project. We start project that we cannot finish. At least I'm sure that my successor will not inherit 116 uncompleted and abandoned projects. Certainly not going to happen.
Join us as we dig deep into the National Water Resources Bill and all of its implications, amongst other crucial matters, next week on Eagle Eye. Next week on the program, we take you all access into the great nexus between water resource management and power generation in Nigeria as we head to the nation's northeast, where we undertook a thorough investigative tour of new hydropower facilities. You will not want to miss this. I have enjoyed this time with you, and I thank you for your viewership. I look forward to your company as I host you once again next week at this same time on this network. Until next time, may God Almighty go with you, and as eagles, may we all soar and lift our nation high as we do.